This is NEGOTIATEx TV.
Hello and welcome to the NEGOTIATEx podcast. I am your co-host, co-founder Nolan Martin, and with me, as always, co-host, co-founder Aram Donigian. Aram, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm great. I'm going to go ahead and just get us started by introducing our fabulous guest. Folks, today we're joined by Steve Alban Tineo, CEO of Assertive Group. He is a globally recognized leader, negotiator, and inspirational speaker with more than 2 decades of experience. Operating on the international stage, Steve works both in the visible world and in an undercover capacity. He navigates high-stakes negotiations, resolves complex situations, and forms a cornerstone of negotiation and crisis management teams. Also standing out in his capacity as a successful negotiator of commercial contracts. Steve is recognized as one of Europe's most skilled negotiators and conflict resolution responders. He has conducted hundreds of negotiations with governments, businesses, organizations, and individuals worldwide. As a trusted advisor, he has provided counsel and negotiation expertise to an extensive network cultivated over many years, which includes prominent leaders in diplomacy, banking, finance, sports, and media. With a background in investment banking, including successful tenures at Credit Suisse, First Boston, and HSBC, Steve is a financier able to structure intricate financial deals, resolve critical situations, and foster strong business development. In recent years, Steve has invested in and accompanied a dozen companies with a combined valuation of over $500 million. As an accomplished speaker, Steve captivates audiences with his unique charisma, delivering hundreds of inspirational talks that empower individuals with the tools and attitude needed for success and greatness. He holds various international certifications, including from Harvard, with a track record that speaks for itself. An experienced diver and qualified pilot, Steve is passionate about psychology, psychiatry, and spirituality. Above all, he is committed to fighting violence and injustice, supporting children and the vulnerable through his Vision for Peace initiative. Steve, that is a whole lot. I don't know how you have the time to even talk to us today.
Is that my view? You're speaking about someone else. I want to meet that guy.
It's you.
Where is he?
It is you. And Steve, thanks for being on the program.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much. I just want to say that bios are really nice, but there's a cost to everything. And there's a lot of failures and a lot of other stories behind, and we'll talk about it, that not everything is as flashy as it is on the one-pager description of yourself. But thank you very much. Yeah.
Well, Steve, thanks for taking the time to visit with us. Would you mind telling us a bit about your journey in negotiation? Who were the major influencers on your thinking? And what were some key milestones along the way?
Right. Well, first, thank you very much to have me on the show. It's a pleasure and an honor. It's a little bit of a bumpy road. I didn't start in negotiation saying, oh, I want to become a negotiator, especially that I know I look really young. Right? I should be 27, but I'm not. I'm very close to 50 now. So when I started negotiation, I was 25, and the subjects were not as open as now. There was not many programs. So there was the Harvard program, which was almost untouchable, and so. It's really a mix of good and bad luck. I come from what we call a toxic family. So I had a lot of hardness when I was young, which forged a part of resilience, and another part which was maybe the beginning of mediation. So when you go through these difficulties, you have to handle conflicts. So in terms of conflicts, when I face these conflicts, it would actually, instead of hurting me, it would increase my concentration and my mental capacity, which I discovered later. But when something was happening at school, I was always the president of the school, and I was always captain of the football team, and so on. And when it happened, there was really something clicking inside of me, which inspired me to act. And it was easy, and I didn't feel fear, and I was always very calm, very concentrated, like you do when you're very close to a meditative stage. So that's the number one. Then I started working in finance at Credit Suisse First Boston as a junior analyst. Then I went to HSBC, where I created in finance the first sports and media team that became the biggest sports and media platform. So literally we had sports and media, celebrities and other football clubs as clients in both wealth management, private banking, and corporate banking. And in that environment, I got promoted to something called the top 50, which is the 50 employees with the most potential of the bank. And I met with an amazing negotiator. That was my first negotiation class. And he actually put words on things that I was feeling. And this gentleman, which is quite old now, was one of the negotiators of the end of the apartheid. And he was very well recognized in the world. We're talking about more than 20 years now. So when negotiation was not a key subject. And so he tricked us, and I completely failed into one of his tests. And I stood up in front of everybody the day after, and with tears in my eyes, and I apologized because my answer was very non-ethical at all. And so I apologized, and I cried in front of everybody, saying, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize that I became this kind of man. So he asked me to come to his hotel, and we sat down at the bar and said, Steve, there's two things. You're one of the most talented person I've seen. So I think you have the talent to become something great into all kind of negotiation. And I've never seen someone of humility and authenticity. And so it was, of course, I'm pretty sure it was just one compliment, but actually he opened doors for me to all of the negotiation programs, France. He trained me. And that's when I discovered what negotiation was. And luckily, a few months after, there was a few cases in Geneva where terrorist cell had actually bank accounts. So all kind of terrorist cells. So they needed someone kind of crazy, to play the banker, just get information for the Swiss government and, for the prosecutors and all of it. And when the CEO called me into his office and said, look, we have that case and we need someone, so I felt something amazingly aligned, that sparkle in my stomach. And that's when I said, look, I'll do it. And it took me a few days to bring the answers, which they've been chasing for literally over 2 years. So that gave me a few stars. And then from that one to another one to another one, then I was infiltrated, and, I helped a little bit here and there on recovering the right information. And that's when I started training in negotiation. I went on my own. I left HSBC. I created my own family office with a few Formula One drivers. I continued training myself, worked with very skilled doctors. And then, I trade with these doctors, then I participate with them, then I trade others, and I'll explain you that in the KYC. And so, that's the beginning. So just to let you know one thing, my wife always says, never ask Steve a question if you don't have 30 minutes for the answer. So he abstained one, she's saying that. Poor one. She has to support me every day, but she's adorable.
Steve, that's a wealth of a background. And I can appreciate what you shared around just kind of the toxic family background and the resilience that built. And I wonder how much that leads into the humility and authenticity that your mentor in negotiation saw in you, which we know are critical skills. Assertive, the art of ethical negotiation, that's the name of your company. Could you tell us a little bit about the nature of the work you're doing today, and include the BART, B-A-R-T platform that's really at the center, and maybe provide some examples of the work you do with clients to improve their negotiation capability?
Right. So there's really 3 aspects in what we do, and I'll explain each of them in a little bit of details. The first one is finance. We do financial negotiation for and with people. And so in that regards, I've realized very early that some very skilled, for example, engineers, biologists, people with less human capabilities, or they would be shy, or that would be more difficult to interact with people, but they would be absolutely skilled in different things, where they had difficulties actually creating and running companies. So I give you one number. 85% of the failures in startups in Switzerland, but it's quite globally the same, it's because of conflicts between the founders. So it's not that these guys are not clever, it's just they don't know how to handle the relationships. And it's fine, I cannot be an engineer, I cannot be a biologist. So it's actually to put everybody at his right place. And that's when I started BART. In finance, I have access to a few wealthy families that I work with, or a few private equity funds. And so what we do is actually we co-invest with some of these very skilled people. We create the human capital around them so they're protected and they can really bring their skills in what they do, let's say in engineering, And then we follow on the investors, we do the relationship, we train some of the teams in negotiation. And instead of having them doing something that they're not too good at, then we really try to preserve them in the talents they have. So that's the number one. And I'll come because KYF was created with training with Formula One drivers to really understand what's the difference between talent and strength. The second part is humanitarian in diplomatic world. I must admit that the cost of acquisition of a mandate is very high. It's difficult to have a place at the table for peace. So I worked a lot with the World Economic Forum for many years and other international institutions. So that's where I get a little bit of reputation. Actually, a partner of our company, Assertive, sadly she passed. She was the former general manager of the World Economic Forum. So when you're introduced to diplomats through these channels, they trust you. But honestly, to send a bio, as nice as the bio you read, when you send something, honestly, you don't go and do cold calls for diplomatic and humanitarians. It's very restrictive. So I must say that this is the part where I would like to have the most impact. But sadly, with the passing of Denise, the doors became a little bit smaller. So, and the last part, which I really like, it's the education part and the lectures, conferences. So you will tell me if I'm good at giving lectures or giving, it's written in the bio that I'm so charismatic and so good looking and so everything. Like, I don't know who wrote that bio, but it's a little bit too much vino on a Saturday night. No, but there's a little something I think with the authenticity of what I have. I tend to judge people. And they like what I say, not much of the content, because the content is great on many negotiation programs, more on the attitude, the who you are. So my actually program, it's called Aptitudes to Attitude. Harvard, MIT, and Stanford came out with a study saying that success, which definition of success is health, wealth, family, career, happiness, and a few words, was 15% aptitude, what you know, and 85% attitude. So if they give me a Formula One driver to prepare, I did a lot of mentor preparation, then I'm not going to teach him how to drive, the aptitude. I'm going to teach him how to become a better human being, not better in terms of my standards, but better in terms of him being really aligned with his fears, with stress, with pain, with sex, with all of these things that are actually touching us emotionally. So my little take is I've studied emotions very, very deeply, working with a great mentor, Dr. Daniel Dufour. He was at the head of the medical doctor of the ICRC, the Red Cross, and he was hostage negotiator for the ICRC with all the war leaders. And this guy taught me so much, and we worked for 13 or 14 years together, and we worked on Formula One drivers. So that was inspiration number one. And I was very lucky to work with another doctor, Dr. Aki Insa, who was recognized as one of the best doctors in sports. So he had 174 Olympic champions, 8 of the world, the last Formula One world champion went through his cabinet, and I was very close to a few of them. So I worked with him on that. And so I kind of gained on being part of their program. I learned a lot. Then I worked with them. And then I started, training on a few negotiators or a few field agents. And, so that's the education part, which for me, the most important is how you touch people to be themselves. Because if I tell you my secret sauce on how to handle a negotiation, that's not going to work. You can learn a part of the aptitude, but you need to define and find your own attitude. And I think this is maybe the little bit of a difference. I'm not dogmatic. When I hear some of the negotiation programs of we exchange information, they're great people, they're great programs, they're great everything. But if I tell you to follow my negotiation style, you might hurt yourself. I give you one example. I've stopped being a mediator because I come from a toxic background. It is impossible for me to stand in front of an injustice situation, for example, a man or a woman being beaten or manipulated. You do a mediation, you stay neutral, you see that the toxic person has taken the other one under that manipulative behavior. And then you do 3 times, 1 hour, legally binding. Nobody saw the manipulation. The poor lady completely submitted. It goes to the judge and she's back living with the same executioner. I could not stay with my profile. I could not stay neutral. So I decided to stop mediation for that. And what we try to do, it's, there's a big difference between your talents, which is what you know how to do well, and the strength it creates. A lot of people, they have talent in something, they do it well, but it burns energy. So you don't have strength where your talent is. So if I force someone, or, in most of the companies we have in Europe, I exclude the United States because I don't know enough of your social environment, but if I'm not good at something, the company is going to pay me to become better at that thing. But instead, we're trying to take where you're really good at, we train you to become one of the best in your talent and your strength. And then if you're really not good at that, I find someone to actually, to be compatible, to compensate. We call that complementarity. And then we create teams which are not toxic, where they complement each other, and they actually create a much better version of 1 and 1. It's not 2, it actually goes to something higher. So that's what we try to bring, not on the aptitude negotiation classes. We have one, but it's just the base of the different terms and the different thing. For me, it's really who you are and how you can actually bring that to the world, if it answers your question.
Yeah, I really like that.
In less than 30 minutes. Can you imagine? That second answer was...
well done. We'll make sure we let your wife know you did it in less than 30. I just like that. The idea that one with individuals help them be kind of better versions of themselves with the strengths they have. I think that's really important. I rather than thinking of negotiation as some act that we put on. And this other idea that you shared was this idea of creating complementary teams where we see exponential value, not 1 + 1 = 2, but 1 + 1 = 4.
Yes.
Is really insightful.
Just take an example. I always say each one, teach one. I love that little thing. Imagine with your expertise, being in the army, being American, the things you've seen. Imagine the number of things you can teach me that I just didn't see because you don't know what you don't know. I didn't have time to learn. It was not the same. Just imagine the number of information. If you accept that you don't know much and you're open to learning from the others, your learning curve there's no end to it. And that's actually a fantastic mindset. Like, Simon Sinek is talking about the infinite game. This is the infinite game. I'm not here.
Right.
When people ask me what is the most difficult negotiation in my life, I often answer it's the next one. Because I have no idea if I'll be in the right mindset, if I would understand it well, if I would, just see everything from the angle. So that gives that authenticity, humility, gives me more strength than actually weaknesses. And we tend to have people,
absolutely,
if you don't know, you're vulnerable and you have to show that you have to play a role. And I see a lot of people hurting themselves because of that.
You mentioned KYF, Know Yourself First, a methodology you developed over 20 years ago. Not only is it a foundational to the work you do, but it's also a critical piece to a book you co-authored, Through the Self. What is this KYF concept? What makes it so critical in negotiation? And as we were kind of talking about earlier, how does surfing and other extreme sports connect to it?
So this is the book. And this is my lovely wife, Sonia, who actually was kind enough to write the book. And she wrote all the structure and I did more of the inside.
Very cool.
Look, this is a lot of, well, 2 aspects. I was very young. I was arrogant. I made a little bit of money. I thought I know much. And then life was kind enough to take that money away, to take that success away, and to show me that I didn't know much. So working with these doctors, working with people that would actually be very effective in very complex situations, taught me how to look at things differently. At the beginning, I really thought, like most of us, we do believe, and I'm going to take something as in relationship, right? We sometimes believe that it is the tools that we're going to use. So meaning the restaurant you choose and the kind of, suit you put, and then this rational aspect of it. But if you want to seduce her, it goes to the attitude. It's how much of that energy you're gonna transpire. How is the environment? How do you actually work with yourself? So I realized working with these Formula One drivers that a lot of these people were really unhappy. Because when you have all the rational in the world and you don't have that emotional connection with yourself, you can have literally everything and it's not going to make you happy. I remember, coming out of that toxic family and toxic childhood and all of it, I really thought that money would give me recognition. And I really thought that being a trader would give me recognition. So I bought one car, another one, and then you just travel and you just realize that, you're miserable in economy or in first class. And it was a huge shock for me because I realized that I was running after something that would not exist. So life was kind enough. And I say it with a little bit of humility because it was really shit. It was really bad. When I crashed, I really went into a bad depression. I wanted to commit suicide. So life was kind enough not to crush me, but to actually show me the wall and give me a chance to survive. Because there's a lot of people that actually create sicknesses, cancer, or commit suicide, and they don't have that chance. So I have a lot of gratitude for that. And working with all of these people, I was 29 when it happened. I went through all of the little mentors that I had seen around. And I started asking the question of the people that would be the more fulfilled and the more happy. And they directed me into philosophy mainly, old philosophies, but, just simple philosophies of life. And everything that was written was always about discovering yourself. When honestly, discovering myself was the most difficult thing for everything. I was so afraid of that poor little broken boy, that compensated with everything and that I was so good looking from the outside, but inside I was just absolutely broken. So all of this, I just realized that when I started working with these doctors to heal myself first. Negotiation came on the side as a parallel and then he made the link. I just realized that, all of the people that start this personal development and work on themselves would actually lower the resistance, lower the stress. They would become more humane. They would become more empathetic. They would start meditate. And that was actually a pattern with people, not meditation. It's just only one thing. Meditation can be listening to your best song and, standing up on your bed, jumping in the morning and you're happy. That's a meditation. It's just losing your mind. And so I've realized that the entire work we were doing with this doctor, these two doctors, Aki was calling his methodology something bringing to the core, which in psychology or in philosophy, they call it the self. And it was exactly the same. So we had long discussion with that doctor. And every time he was telling me something medical, I was telling me something philosophical and it matched. And so then when I started these negotiation classes and I started to become a negotiator, which sometimes I'm wondering what does it really mean? People were telling me, hey, what is the best negotiation class? And my first answer was like, hey, what is your profile? And they say, what do you mean? And he said, yeah, because based on your profile, you can actually choose what is the best. And the training for Formula One drivers would not be the same based on their profile. We had to know who they were. So based on all of that, years after years, I wrote thousands and thousands of pages. And then I created smaller. Everything we do is boutique size. I really don't have huge ambition. I have ambition of efficiency and moving on. But we really created small programs where people would come in and they would really work on themselves and we would accompany them out of depression, out of traumas. We would help them build something or, get rid of toxicity in their life. And we saw that almost all of the people that would do, let's go inside out, they would heal. But within 6 months, they would have completely changed their life. And the people that would actually move things around outside of their life, most of them would continue reproducing the negative patterns they had. So I started talking with psychologists, psychiatrists, and I started studying everything, which I'm not a psychologist, but I've studied the subject as much as I could. And it was very interesting for me to actually put that into writing. So my wife was a famous singer in Switzerland. And she had gone through 10 years, very toxic relationship. So she could go out of that relationship. She was alone, lonely, broken, but still famous. And so I contacted her because I saw on the internet that she had created an association against harassment and domestic violence. And I said, look, I know a little bit about these subjects. Maybe I can help. And when I sat down in front of her, everything she was saying was the opposite of a vibration. She was completely off. She was almost dead inside it. She says it in the book. She was actually very close to die in that moment. So I invited her in the program. And so she says, I want to save the world. I want to help this. I want to do that. I want to write a book. And I said, before everything else, we're just going to look after yourself. And she went through the program for 9 months and she completely changed. She discovered that the self in a small or in a bigger way. She would say it in a bigger way because she touched a little bit consciousness, mindfulness, all this. Let's not go into these details, but the subject. And it was the beginning of everything. So everything she had learned in her life, because it came from inside out, she would do it better. Wow. You become a better negotiator. You become a better parent. You become a better driver. You become a better everything because you're so aligned with yourself that actually you don't need to force it. You don't need to fake it. You're there completely with actually your brilliant side and with your dark side. And when you accept both of them, you lose most of your mental resistance and things are happen. And we see that I do a lot of conflict resolution, and we talk about it in a minute. A conflict is emotional. If it is not emotional, it's not a conflict, it's a disagreement. We put a lawyer, a rational a part of it, but how do you want a conflict with an emotional aspect to someone who is toxic or who doesn't know himself? He doesn't even know. I had something this morning, and the person was talking like this, and and I said, I feel anger against that person. Oh no, I'm not angry at all. And this is most of the people, sometimes you don't know in your state. You don't know that you're actually your own enemy or your own block. You don't know the triggers. So you know that when you're emotional, you're less rational, and then you cannot think it right. So whatever rational you've learned, when you have an emotional crisis, your cognitive charge is saturated and the words are not coming out of your mouth. I'm sure you had this with someone you're afraid at school. You say, oh, today I'm going to tell him this and that and that and that and that. You go in front of the person, you're paralyzed. You're in the freeze, right? And in that freeze, whatever aptitude you have is not there. So you need to neutralize it. And that's why we created KYF. It's say, guys, I don't have much to show you than the mirror of yourself. KYF is a mirror of you guys, saying it's the mirror of me, saying, well, what you think about me says more about you than about me. What you say about Nolan says more about you than about him. And when you just realize that every time you say something about the world, it's about yourself, then you can start taking real ownership of your flows and of your greatness and search into improving your talents and everything. I've never had the Formula One by telling him how to drive or how to be a better driver. It was really how to be a better and calmer version of himself, to be aligned, even when, they would want to be less positive or less kind with journalists. And hey, who are you? How do you feel? What kind of anger? How do you handle yourself? And so that's the, in less than 30 minutes, that's the answer to your question.
It's that accepting, as you said, your brilliant and dark sides, and we all have them. And sometimes that's just hard to do. You've shared a number of different sorts of people, individuals you've worked with. What a wide range, from investment bankers to doctors.
Hey, but I work with a lot of simple people, and I consider myself part of the simple people. I mentioned Formula One drivers, but I work with them. I'm not one of them at all.
You've also worked with a lot of different businesses, corporations, banks, multinational groups, governments, NGOs, and so forth. From a negotiation lens, I guess we would say, oh, those are also different. And maybe they are around who they negotiate with and over what things. I'm curious about the types of challenges, though, as you look. I mean, are they that different, or do you see some similarities between the nature of the challenge as you help these organizations?
I'm going to quote someone, and I'm completely apolitical, but I really like Barack Obama, how his personality was, and the kind of intelligence he had. And in his foundation, he's actually giving a speech about the different level. And he says, he started as a community organizer, and he says that there was always the same kind of people blocking, and, he needed to go to the Senate. He went to the Senate. He was the same kind of people. And then he went to the G20, and he was sitting around the table with all of these world leaders. And he said, dang, it is exactly the same. The thing is, that doesn't change with levels and position. We can say that if you take in any corporation, someone that never had any power and has some wounds and toxicity, you give him the little chef role, he's going to become a dictator. And say, if you take someone that's been, hurt or doesn't have any self-recognition, well, that guy is going to become a toxic leader, whatever it is. So yes, money gives you a little more power. It's a bigger stage. The tools are different. The jets are different. Everything. And the thing is, it is actually, I work with a lot of NGOs. And I tell you, the people leading these NGOs were dictators with absolutely everything, even hurting the very people on the ground that they were supposed to help. And they didn't see it. That's actually the worst for me. It's we don't see our own toxicity. And I have discussions with my wife where she has to tell me what is dysfunctional, because I don't realize sometimes when I'm hurting her. Well, you've realized that I speak too much, and she's very reserved. So at the beginning, every time people were asking her a question, she would tell me, hey, Steve, can you help me answer, because you answer better than me. And so I started as a reflex to go and save her. And every time I would actually answer more than her. And, 2 years after, she said, but do you think that I'm stupid that you don't let me answer my questions? And what I thought was a kindness actually had turned into a toxicity. And if we don't mention that, if we don't talk about this, we don't see the impact we have on each other. So we're always blaming the others. Hey, you did that. It's because of you. Fair enough. Now, what did I do? And what did I do to myself? So that's very key. It's the same people, the same functioning, the same toxicity. Now, there's one thing, and I don't want to go into psychology or psychiatry, but by wanting power, for example, a certain type of people, the narcissists, for example, will tend to go more into higher into the food chain. So they will want to have more money and more power because they need it. So the more you go up in actually the hierarchy, the social hierarchy, the more toxic people in terms of percentage you will find. So I think in the US, you have a few studies that came out that at least the number of sociopaths being CEO of companies is double the rate of what you would find in normal. So I'm not going to go into numbers because there's plenty of studies, but it's important. And of course, and I mean, if you have your own self-recognition with money and power, or if you're narcissistic, you are less empathetic, you can push the people more on your way up, and the kind people will not fight with the same arms. So, but honestly, with what we see, I'm very disappointed with I really thought we talk about Vision for Peace, but in Vision for Peace, we helped a lot of NGOs, and for free, we really wanted to be superheroes without superpowers by reading that, but honestly, it was exactly the same functioning as we could see everywhere else.
Hey everyone, Nolan here. I have to jump in today's podcast, part A of the show. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. And also join us next week for the part B of this awesome interview. Hey, thanks for checking out this video on NEGOTIATEx TV. If you found any value at all, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon if you want to be notified of future videos. And then we also have a couple videos over here that you might be interested in checking out. If you and your small business, your team are looking to get negotiations or leadership training, then you can head over to negotiatex.com and learn more about the coaching services we offer. Thanks, and I'll see you over the next video.